I am confident that Arch Manning will turn it around, and I will tell you why on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Please remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. That's one of the fastest ways to help us grow right here on Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your bets now. All right. Steve Sarkisian has been getting too much credit for something he's not very good at. That's coming up in segment 2. And then some positive in segment 3. One area of the team that we thought was going to be good, but I think through one game has proven to be even better than we expected. But first, a little more Arch conversation coming out of Saturday. Again, Arch Manning's 2025 debut was not good. 17 of 30, 170 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The first half was downright ugly. 5 for 10 for just 26 yards. He picked it up a little bit in the second half, really picked it up in the fourth quarter. But even then, when Arch and this Longhorn offense finally got into a little bit of a rhythm, there were still too many misses from Arch Manning. He looked bad, and he looked just kind of in over his head in Columbus. And really, he looked that way from the opening snap of the football game, right? The first pass that he threw, he had DeAndre Moore kind of wide open, and he undershot him by 5 yards. And then it just kind of went from bad to worse throughout the course of the game. And honestly, I've gone back and rewatched this game. It looks even worse the second time around. And the all-22 footage has come out, and that looks bad. And I've seen a few former quarterbacks break down the tape, and it is a tough watch. Y'all know it. I know it. It's easy to see. Arch Manning's mechanics were way off on Saturday, and the accuracy was non-existent, and his decision-making was poor. Like, Sark has to shoulder a good amount of the blame for the offense only scoring 7 points. That's how it works when you're the head coach and the offensive play caller. But there were more than a few plays where Sark had come up with something good enough to scheme a guy open, and Arch just didn't see it. Either he didn't look, or he went through his progressions too quickly and didn't wait for one of his targets to free up. He just didn't see it. Now, again, I'm not here to absolve Steve Sarkisian of all criticism here. A lot of the game plan was not up to snuff, and he got out-dueled by Matt Patricia on the other sideline. But a better day from the quarterback may have been enough to win despite some of the other inefficiencies that the Longhorns had on offense. Arch Manning was so rushed. He was playing like he was in a panic. And I usually don't love comparing myself to any of these guys because I don't have a millionth of the athletic talent that these guys do. But I know when I'm rushed, I'm not me. Like, you're not you when you're hungry. That's what Snickers says. You're not you when you're rushed. You're not you when you're in a panic. And that's what Arch Manning was for way too much of the game on Saturday. So it was bad, and he was bad. But there are a couple of reasons, actually a few reasons, why I'm confident that the version of Arch Manning that we saw in Columbus won't be the version of Arch Manning that we see going forward. We'll start with the obvious. The situation was not easy. Arch Manning's first career road start in a top 5 environment in college football against a top 3 team that just won the national championship. And it was banner night, and it was Lee Corso tribute day. And you're going up against a 3-time Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator who nobody had any film on because Matt Patricia hasn't been a college coach in more than 2 decades. So a lot of this thing is just a cap tip to Matt Patricia and Ohio State's defense. Those guys were the best defense in America last year. They may have the best defense in America again this year. So I don't want that to get lost here. The situation for any quarterback, established vet, first-time road starter, whatever, there's a lot going on for Arch Manning, and all of the pressure with all of the hype and expectations and the talking heads just giving him all of this praise all off season long. Arch Manning is never going to have to deal with all of that again. So I think on its surface, just not having to deal with that is going to help. Now, number 2, Go back and look at Colt McCoy's first start in 2006, his first year as the Texas starter. Funny enough, his first start that year was a loss to Ohio State. I should say his first start against a real team that year was a loss to Ohio State. And his stat line wasn't pretty. 19 of 32 passing, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Texas kind of got blown out of their own building in that game. Colt McCoy threw for fewer yards, less yards per attempt. He barely had a higher completion percentage than Arch Manning did on Saturday, but that was Colt's second career start, his first year as a starter, the first real opponent that he played. Oh, by the way, that was a game at DKR, and it was a struggle for him. Like, Colt McCoy didn't look like a guy who would go on to set a bunch of school records and graduate as one of the winningest quarterbacks in college football history. At least that's not how I remember that game. He turned it around after that. Vince Young's first career start, greatest Texas quarterback of all time, at Arkansas in 2004, his first career road start. Not sure if I said that. It's a game that Texas won 22-20, but you look at VY's stat line, 150 passing yards, 50% completion percentage. He only rushed it for 56 yards, so it wasn't one of those incredible signature VY ground games. Like, it was far from an overwhelmingly good performance against an Arkansas team that ended up winning just 5 games that season. I don't think people left that game thinking, oh my God, we have just watched one of the greatest college football players of all time. Got to give Arch Manning time. Colt McCoy didn't do it in his first game against a real team. VY didn't do it in his first game against a real team. How about family ties? Peyton Manning's first career start against a top 10 team back at Tennessee, 10 of 18, 138 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions against Alabama. Oh, by the way, that was a home game for Tennessee too. So a couple of Texas examples and then a family example from the Mannings that tell you that you should give Arch Manning time. Steve Sarkisian talked about it a lot in his post-game presser on Saturday. He talked about it a lot yesterday. Arch Manning's story is far from over. You don't judge an entire book based on the first chapter. There's a lot more that is yet to be written from Arch Manning, and I think it's going to be a lot better. Another reason why I feel good about Arch turning it around, and I went back and watched highlights of the 2.5 games that he really played in last season, right? The 2 starts and then the game against UTSA where he came in relief of Quinn Ewers because Quinn got hurt. Not a huge sample size, but it's a sample size. Like, if Saturday was Arch Manning's first career start or just his first career meaningful passing attempts, I'd be a little more concerned. But, against UTSA in the second half, then against ULM, then against Mississippi State in the SEC opener, there's enough good that Arch Manning put on tape to feel confident that he's capable of doing way more than what we saw at the shoe. And the stats kind of tell the story, right? UTSA coming in off the bench, 9 of 12, 223 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, also added a rushing score in that game too. Mississippi State, he was 26 of 31. 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. He also had a rushing score in that game too. So the stats back it up, but also the mechanics. I've got some screenshots here from, one of them is from Saturday against Ohio State, and then the others are from last year in the game against Mississippi State. You see the time if you're watching this on YouTube. The 3rd and 5 throw, 1:36 left in regulation. Texas is down a touchdown. They're trying to march down the field and score to force overtime. This is a 3rd and 5 pass attempt to Ryan Wingo over the middle. This is a clean pocket for Arch Manning. You see Ryan Wingo is wide open over the middle of the field. This is not a long throw. I mean, Wingo's 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. This is probably a 12-yard air throw, or a 12 air yard throw, I should say, for Arch Manning. This is a throw that he can make in his sleep. But look at his footwork. Like, this is right as the ball is coming out of his hands. Like, he's basically sideways. And this is a sidearm throw too. I don't know if you can really tell the arm angle, but he's basically sideways. His weight isn't going the right way. His body is not pointed towards his target at all. It's a sidearm throw, and he just didn't need to do it. And the ball is behind Ryan Wingo, and it ends up being an incomplete pass. Like, that's not good at all. And there was way too much of that in the game on Saturday. Now we look at this. This is a very similar route. Again, Texas, Mississippi State last year. You see Gunnar Helm over the middle of the field. He's about 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, but also, 10, 12 air yards on this throw. See how Arch Manning has his shoulders and his front leg planted right towards the target. See how his arm angle is overhand? He's not trying to sidearm fling this one. Like, these are good mechanics right here. This ends up being a perfect throw and an easy pitch and catch to Gunnar Helm. Here's one more. You can't see the receiver on this one, but it's just, you see the direction where Arch Manning is throwing the football. You see where his plant leg is. You see where his head is. You see where his shoulders are. The footwork is there. And last but not least, here's one more where he's throwing left. Again, you see kind of at the very bottom of your screen, right by the, my face might be covering up the intended receiver, but everything is going in the right direction. And all of these passes were completed passes for Arch Manning. So I hope I'm not trying to sound like I'm sort of quarterback expert. I don't do this for a living. I've watched enough football, and my guess is most of you have watched enough football to be able to tell the difference between this and this right here. It was bad. Mechanics, not good. It can be cleaned up. And again, I feel good about it getting cleaned up because we've already seen it from Arch Manning in games. When he's not rushed, when he's not panicked, he sets his feet, actually takes time to go through his reps, then I think he's going to be fine. Now, we need to see it more, but the game will naturally slow down for him with more reps. I think it's also going to slow down at home over these next few weeks. And then keep in mind, Texas may see one team on its schedule with as good of a defense as Ohio State's, at least in the regular season, and that's Georgia, right? So that helps as well. And there was some good from Arch once again, but too much bad, too much inconsistency. But because of all of those things, the situation, look at what some other Texas quarterbacks did in their first start against a really good team. And then the mechanics with what we saw from Arch Manning last year, all of those reasons give me reason to believe that Saturday was a blip on the radar. Not saying it was good, but I don't think that is the type of quarterbacking we're going to get from Arch Manning moving forward. All right, what say you? Comment below with your thoughts. What's your confidence level in Arch the rest of the way? Are you a little bit nervous? Would love to hear from y'all. All right, coming up next, man, Steve Sarkisian has been getting too much credit for something he doesn't deserve. There's a lot of things he deserves credit for. This is something that he doesn't deserve credit for, at least not anymore. I'll tell you what it is next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Supply House. Oh, yeah. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. More than 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items for you to choose from the most trusted brands in the business. Supply House has real-time inventory and honest lead times to keep you from punting projects. They've got industry-leading customer service, so they will always have your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer, and their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and a dedicated support line, they make the whole process so much smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Head over to supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use the promo code SHCollege5 and you'll get 5% off your first order. Again, supplyhouse.com, real people, real service. And also a shout out to our friends at Rougiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them in the past, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiet Ready. Rougiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours to kick in, Rougiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves right under your tongue, and it kicks in fast, on average in just 15 minutes, and the effects last for up to 36 hours, so you could stay confident and you can stay in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked for you, Rougiet might be the answer you've been looking for. More than 150,000 men have already made the switch. So head over to Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off today. Again, Rougiet.com. That's Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. I'll just get right to the point here. Coach Sark has been getting too much praise for his opening scripts from Texas fans, from college football analysts, from TV broadcasters, from football people everywhere, from just about everyone. It feels like we constantly hear about how good of an early game scripter that Steve Sarkisian is, that he's one of the best in the country with the opening script. And maybe he was at one point. But over the last couple of years, that hasn't been the case. I'll give On Texas Football credit for doing some of the research here. Since week 1 of the 2023 season, there have been 31 games that the Texas Longhorns have played, meaning there have been 31 first drives of the game for the Texas offense. Here's the breakdown of how those 31 drives have ended. 12 punts, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3 turnover on downs, 2 field goal attempts, both missed. So of the last 31 opening possessions for Texas, again, the last 2 full years and game 1 against Ohio State, only 9 of them have resulted in points. That's not good. That's less than a third, 31.3% as a matter of fact. For context, let's look at some of the other college football playoff contending type of teams and what they've done since 2023. How about Oregon? They're really good at this. They have scored points on 78.5% of their opening drives since 2023. Again, Texas is at 31%. Notre Dame, points on 62.5% of their opening drives. Ohio State, points on 62.5% of their opening drives. Penn State, 50%. Alabama, 46.2%. All of those teams, again, the teams that Texas has to beat to win conference and national championships, they all do a significantly better job of scoring on their first offensive series than Texas does. Now, believe it or not, Georgia's opening drive scoring percentage is actually a little bit worse than Texas, 28.6%. But still, for the Longhorns, it's not good enough. It's pretty damning. Unfortunately, nationwide stats for this don't exist. So I can't sit here and tell you that Texas ranks X in the country or anything like that. But 31.3%, that's not very good. And it sure as hell doesn't warrant your offensive play caller being called an elite early game coach or scripter or whatever. Those numbers need to be a lot better. An even deeper dive, by the way, you look at the biggest games that Texas has played in against their best opponents, playoff games, conference championship games, rivalry games against OU and A&M. Looked at 14 of those games. 14 opening drives, 5 punts, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2 turnover on downs, 1 missed field goal. So in those big games, again, against the most quality opponents that you've gone up against, you've scored points on just 21.4% of your opening possessions. Even worse. That has to improve. I get it. You're not going to score on your first series every game. Nobody does. And when you're playing in the SEC and you're playing teams like Ohio State, it's just not always going to happen. But it should be happening more than it is. Oh, by the way, kind of a random nugget here. OTF talked about this even more. The numbers are even worse if Texas starts the game with the ball. Like, obviously, every game has an opening drive for the offense at some point, but the games where Texas is on defense first have been much better for their chances of scoring points in their first offensive series. So Ohio State won the toss on Saturday. They deferred. Texas got the ball first. What did they end up doing? Well, they turned it over on downs. They didn't score any points. So that's like, it's not just the red zone play calling issues for Sark right now. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about that, and that remains my biggest concern with the Longhorn offense under the tutelage of Coach Sark. But the numbers show that he has seemingly lost his fastball with the opening scripts, at least with the opening drives. I promise I'm a Sark guy, but like that's the numbers right there. And what else is weird? Texas has been good in terms of first quarter scoring. Like last year, they were 11th in the country in first quarter scoring. 2 years ago, they were 15th in the country in first quarter scoring. So like once we get to series 2 or series 3, things generally pick up a little bit. Maybe it's once the defense gets out there, it's fine. And the defense has been so good. They force a 3 and out. They flip the field. They give the offense much more favorable field position. That's something that maybe explains that. Maybe Steve Sarkisian just needs to get into the game a little bit and warm up. I'm not sure, but that's something that really needs to improve moving forward. Steve Sarkisian, as of late, and again, this is not just one game or 5 games. This is a pretty decent sample size. His opening possessions have not been good enough on offense. 31.3%. Again, you compare it to some of the other teams that Texas is competing with at the highest level of this sport, and the Longhorns are not up to snuff. So something I'd like to see improved. Great opportunities over these next 3 games against lesser opponents to get on the scoreboard first and get your offense in rhythm. I know every Longhorn fan would like to see that after what we just saw from that unit in Columbus. It's got to improve. All right, let's end on a high note. Too much negativity. How about an extremely positive takeaway from game 1? There's one element of this Texas team that we thought was going to be good, but it's even better than we thought. I'll tell you what it is next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here. It starts on Thursday, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel has so many ways to win. Player props, same game parlays. You can bet after the ball is kicked as well. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just watching a random game around the league. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little energy to your Sunday. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Again, FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And also, a shout out to our friends at Game Time. College football is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. The first home game is this weekend. There's nothing like being at a game in person. But let's be honest, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Long lines, hidden fees, prices randomly jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with zero surprise fees. What you see is what you pay every single time with our friends at Game Time. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's less stressful than any other way that I've bought tickets in the past. I think it'll be the same for you as well. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, final segment of a Tuesday show. Locked On Longhorns. Hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. Some positivity here, and I promise moving forward throughout the week and hopefully throughout the season, there's a more positive tone and more positive segments than what we've started this week with. But I like ending on a high note, so we're going to do that today. I know it's one game, and I know a lot of my shows this week have been about not overreacting to just one game, but I am ready to stake the claim that Texas once again has an elite front seven. Despite losing Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton and 5 other scholarship defensive tackles inside, and despite losing Barron Sorrell on the edge, despite David Bender graduating, a few guys changing positions, all of those things, despite everything that I just mentioned, it's safe to say that this front seven is once again really special. Ohio State's rushing stats, or lack thereof, kind of tell the whole story. The Buckeyes ran for just 77 yards as a team. 89 if you take away the kneel downs at the end of the game, but still not a lot. They ran for less than 3 yards a carry. They averaged less than 2 yards after contact per carry, meaning that Texas wasn't missing tackles against some really, really good Ohio State backs. The longest rush of the day for the Buckeyes was 8 yards. I know Ohio State lost Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, but James Peoples and CJ Donaldson, those guys are really good. And Buckeye fans have been hyping those dudes up all off season long. And I would think those two are going to put up some pretty gaudy numbers this season. Texas held them both in check. And also, you look at Pro Football Focus's grades from this game. Ohio State's highest graded offensive line had a rating of 61. Texas had 3 defensive tackles, 3, with a rating of 75 or higher. The Longhorns won up front. Texas had 5 defensive tackles rotating throughout the game. Hero Kanu led the group in snaps. You saw Murad Watson out there, Alex January, Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw. All of those guys logged at least 15 snaps in the game, which is huge. Depth is important all over the field, but especially with those big guys up front. You got to go up. The offensive line stays out there pretty much every snap. If you can rotate a bunch of defensive tackles, That's going to wear down an offensive line over the course of 60 minutes. And, you can't sub guys out if the guys you're subbing in aren't any good. Everybody out there looked good for Texas. Cole Brevard, Hero Kanu, and Alex January were awesome. How about this stat? Of the 49 SEC defensive tackles who played at least 10 snaps against FBS opponents in week 1, 3 of the top 5 highest graded run defenders were on Texas. Brevard, January, and Kanu. So it wasn't just one guy who was great. It was a bunch of guys on that defensive front who showed up and showed out. And, oh, by the way, Texas played that game without Levon Johnson, who's coming off of an injury. At some point, I think Texas is going to be able to add him too. So love that. And I think maybe the most impressive part of what the Longhorns front 7 showed us on Saturday, Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons, who are the 2 best players up there, they didn't have great games. Like, Hill tackled well, but he over-pursued on a couple of plays. You didn't hear his name a bunch on the broadcast. Colin Simmons didn't do a lot of anything. I think Ohio State did a good job game planning to take him out of the game. 12 personnel, 13 personnel, a lot of quick throws for Julian Sand. So credit Ohio State for part of that. But for a lot of teams, if you take like their best 1 to 2 players out of a game, it could mean that the whole unit is going to struggle. Not the case for Texas at all. Mention the defensive tackles, how good they were. Leon Galafau was fantastic. Led the team in tackles. He was all over the place. Anthony Smith, I thought, had a pretty solid showing. Trey Moore really set the edge as well. Like, Texas did a great job, and they held up really well against a team with elite talent. It was fun to watch. So, I felt good about that group. Maybe not going into the offseason, but once Texas added those 5 transfers and we started hearing about how those guys were looking in the spring and in the summer and into training camp, I started feeling pretty good about what Texas had there. But now I feel even better. And it's pretty amazing that you look at everything the Horns have lost in their front 7 over the last couple of years, dating back to 2023, when Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy and Jalen Ford were all a part of this defense. You lose those guys, you're like, well, what do we have in 2024? This could be scary. Texas's front was elite last year. They were one of the best run defenses in America. Then you lose Collins and Broughton, who were top 2-day draft picks in the NFL. And you lose, again, 7 total scholarship defensive tackles, plus an edge guy, plus a linebacker. You're wondering, there's no way this group can be that good again this year. Feels like for Texas, it is. Again, against a really good team, they showed a lot. You think about these next 3 games, this front is about to feast. San Jose State rushed for just 75 yards against Central Michigan last week. Texas has 8, 9, 10 future NFL players in their front 7 for the next few weeks. All of the stars, but even some of the guys we didn't hear a lot about. Zena Umeozulu, Justice Terry, Lance Jackson, Anthony Smith. Those guys are going to get to break in against lighter competition before, obviously, SEC play begins in October. But, I think Texas is about to feast over these next few weeks. And I think that's going to be a strength of this team for the entire season and hopefully for a long postseason run as well. So there you go. That's a positive. There are plenty of positives from that game, and we'll continue to talk more about them as the week moves along. But that's going to do it for today's show. If you made it this far, that's a positive. Thank you very much. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. That's one of the fastest ways to help us grow right here on Locked On, your team every day. Always appreciate the feedback and always appreciate y'all making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets with my man Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers. They are your one-stop shop for all of your sports betting needs, game picks, the lock of the day. They got you covered. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We'll have some sound from Coach Sark tomorrow. And again, more positive takeaways, more overall takeaways from week 1. And we'll start to turn the page to this San Jose State game coming up on Saturday. But that'll do it for today. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.